Welcome to the Uplift Chronicles, where we journey through the powerful stories of those who inspire, uplift, and make a difference. I am your host, Kofi Dake. In each episode, we dive deep into the lives, accomplishments, and the diverse backgrounds of remarkable individuals, particularly those of Afro heritage, who are changing the world one story at a time. Whether you are seeking motivation, connection, or a celebration of culture, you are definitely in the right place. So sit back and relax, and let's explore how lives are being uplifted both in Africa and across the globe. This is the Uplift Chronicles.
Living in a foreign country can be very enriching. However, it does not go without its own challenges. There are pros and cons in living in a foreign country. Some of the pros that I want to highlight are experiencing new culture and also learning a new language. There is also the experience of broadening your professional network. It also helps you develop cultural awareness, global mindset, and also be self-reliant. What are some of the cons? Culture shock for some could be food, social mannerism, and behavior. Also tone of language when you speak to elders. There could be a language barrier, and then many foreigners also do get homesick and miss out on celebrations at home. Today on this episode, we'll discuss a topic, living in a foreign country, challenges and how to adapt. My special guest to discuss this with me today is Mr. Abel Debilogo, originally from Cameroon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, very welcome. Thank you for making time. I know you're a busy gentleman as well. But you have lived in at least 3 countries that I know of: Cameroon, the USA, and now you reside in Sweden. So I thought this would be a great conversation to have with you. And previously, we did touch on some conversations on how adapting in a foreign country can at times be a challenge to many. Can you please tell our audience a bit about yourself, your educational background, career, and anything that you want to add to kick off this conversation?
Yes. Thank you, Emmanuel. This is definitely an opportunity to be here to share my experience on this platform. And I'm very, I think as I'm coming to age, I'm becoming very excited to share the pros and cons of my journey. Yes. A bit about myself. So I grew up in Cameroon, and I was born in Cameroon, actually. It's like I grew up and I was born in Cameroon. I left Cameroon when I was 13 years old to migrate to the United States.
Is that 13 or 30?
13, 1 and 3. 13 years old. Very young age, actually, to actually depart. Then, you stayed in the U.S. for about 19 years, from 1998 to 2017. And now I am migrated again to Sweden. Sweden, one of the 4 Nordic countries. And it's where I'm currently residing with my wife and 4 children.
Nice. Yeah, congratulations on the big move also and the family.
Yes. It's an amazing journey, very enriching.
Yeah.
So in terms of education, during my residency in USA, I got a master's degree in electrical engineering and a business degree in energy management. And this is where I also started my career as an engineer working for Exelon.
Yes.
Working at Exelon for about 5 years before leaving the United States and moving to Sweden. So just one big company for my whole large career was from education to Exelon, and then I have to depart. So from the education point I was there. So for career-wise, I remained in the energy industry, starting with Exelon as an engineer working on a transmission distribution grid in Washington, D.C., Maryland. and also in southern New Jersey. And I continue on in Sweden, working for Vattenfall, which is one of the largest energy company in Sweden, a state-owned company. I'm currently a Sweden country asset manager for onshore wind farms. Very good, a very rewarding role and very challenging also.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Keep you busy, and busy is good. Yeah, I think that's an impressive bio. Yeah, they had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time in Exxon. I think we practiced engineering at Exxon together. Yeah, I ended up staying there for 6-7 years. But I was happy for you when you had the opportunity to actually relocate to Sweden. We've both been gone since, and here we are. But going back to your early days, migrating to the United States, okay, at 13, and then you had to go through all your educational periods from, I guess, you got as you said, you earned your bachelor's and 2 master's degree. So what can you tell us about your journey and the challenges that you experience for a foreign student?
Right. When I arrived in the US at 13 years old, it wasn't automatic, but it was a smoother process where I was registered into the local high school, which was John F. Kennedy High School in Silver Spring. And that's where I started my in the 9th grade directly. Coming in the 9th grade in a high school, it was still a honeymoon for me, but there were some challenges against the language because in Cameroon I lived in a French area and where we only spoke French, English. So I had to come in quickly ramp up my English.
Okay.
And that wasn't the challenge at all to attempt to speak English. The challenge is that you're not speaking English like the locals.
Yeah.
So that was when I meant like the locals, like with the accent and the swag and everything else, the way they do it, and that was very challenging. That was one of the early challenges that I faced, where I was trying to quickly integrate into the local community, the local high school, teenagers, everything, do sports, but I couldn't break in because simply, one, it was a language barrier, and two, it was a cultural barrier also, where I didn't quite understand how to behave in this particular new environment. And there was actually no book, no coaching, no nothing. So I moved into the US with a family friend, a friend of my father. We're good friends growing up. And there was an opportunity for me for them to increase their business and therefore help each other. I was part of the deal. Come to expand my studies while he's taking care of business back home.
There you go.
So I joined his family. It was 2 boys, 1 girl crew, and they were already well integrated. They've been there for 8 years and plus, well integrated into the high school. They already knew the culture. They had the accent. Everything was fluent for them. And me, I was just amazed. So they navigated. A bit of also jealous, coming up and see how they can easily get engaged with their peers. I mean, it took me quite a while. Actually, it took me all 4 years to actually even try to move from eating alone and to start having some friends to discuss with and to play with. And you get stuck in those ESOL classes. I'm not sure if you recall the ESOL classes, English for immigrants, where it's just you and a bunch of other students that don't speak English in there.
Yeah, well, for me, I came at a latter part, so I actually tested doing I think it's called a TOEFL, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so I was pretty much a little bit grounded in terms of, the rating, people said the Queen's language and stuff like that before I came. But, the challenge is like you mentioned something interesting about the accent. So talking to people, there is a variation on what people try to integrate when they go to a foreign country. Some actually want to speak as the native of that country, but I have met some people, especially I think I met some people like me who will be like, no, I want to be, this is my identity. I'm not changing the way I speak and stuff like that. I guess it's more of on a personal level, right? But
it is.
early at 13, you probably want to be cool just like everybody else. But maybe if you came in later when you're older, you're probably like, yeah, I want to keep this identity, right?
Precisely. And you hit it right there. It's that maturing identity. So coming very young, I don't have that yet. And I'm looking for it. And language is definitely one of the things that teenagers, because I was coming at those teenage, and languages and teenagers are very not nice when to, so for me it was one of the top pillars, basically one of the top objective of my integration goals that I set for myself, is to be able to speak like anybody in the high school here, right? Because I felt like it was the key. So it's not just to speak English, because I was already well fluent in English, but it's to also speak with an accent and with the same attitude as everybody else. So it's not a barrier to me anymore. It's not a tool to segregate me anymore, right? Like I fit in because I speak the way they speak. So that was it right there. And that's how I identify myself. Again, so for people who come in much later, they already have a set way, a set identity, which is really good and enable them to probably go on and move on much faster in the other objective that they have.
Right. So, yeah, so through that phase, after going through all that phase, you went through your education successfully, even got your master's, and then you practice at Exelon. So at this point, when you were practicing a young professional and a foreigner, right? What were some of the challenges that you still faced to adapt?
I want to highlight a bit about the immigration system, because you cannot be as an immigrant into a new country without discussing the immigration system. I mean, you really have to learn the immigration system. I think one of the key learnings in my journey was that I took on the immigration system on my own. Basically, I had to discuss with a lawyer, understand, read the rules, and follow up with immigration. I used to make phone calls every day. I actually knew how to get around the automatic system. You just make that phone call, and you got to press 7 6 to skip all the auto. So I memorized the whole thing because I called them so many times on my case. So you have to really, I think that's the key. One of the key things of integration also is to navigate the immigration system. And I had to do it for quite a long time. Even through my college years, that was also one of the highlights of my college years, basically, because I got my work permit after I got my work permit in my second year of college, basically. So it was quite late. And and that really boosted me when you get that, when you find, oh my God, yes, I'm finally in and no longer on the pending status, and you feel like all that weight off your shoulder. Now you can actually navigate the system properly and with much more energy and courage.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the key part of mentioning. So now the challenges after you have to overcome that, it's now to really integrate into societies. Because now we're just talking about just you getting your tools, your tools, meaning you got your education, you got your job, you got maybe your somewhere to stay, but you still need the social environment, the social network. That's the way I was coming. So it was one of the key challenges to really acquire that social network, preferably to have that girlfriend that you're looking for and the set of friends that you're gonna kick. For me, having a girlfriend was one of the big
girlfriend is supposed to validate your adoption
integration
into the society. Okay, that's a good point also to take. So now when you get a girlfriend and and then now you get all your documentations, like all the immigration documentations, probably in the United States, maybe you're a permanent resident, or you actually become a U.S. Citizen on paper and everything else. Do you at that point feel like you are totally integrated into the society, or there are times that
not really
you're
No, I think the citizenship and everything was I think it was just to open that door, the way I would probably paraphrase it, right? Those are all the tools you need to get just for the door to be open. Now you have to walk into the door and face now the same reality as any Americans are facing at that particular age, right? So they're looking to move up into society from one class to the other class. They're looking to network. They're looking for a nice car. They're looking. So you have those. you start to face the same problems that every single American are facing, but you don't share the same background and history, right? So for example, the struggle with the police, for example, it took me a while to actually relate to how my African American will actually what they were feeling. It was not just to relate to how they see to the perspective. It took me quite a bit of while. Not
Yeah.
because not that I was looking down on them, say, why won't you obey the police? But I'm like, but I cannot fully comprehend the
Right.
logic behind the behavior. Of course, you understand the
But
history.
sometimes also, yeah, not to cut you, but sometimes also it could be due to past experiences and stuff like that. Yeah, because yeah, I think I've talked to some people who had a similar perception on that. They came into the country when they were older from Africa, and their perception was different when it comes to policing and stuff like that. But that's a whole topic on itself. That
Process.
the whole podcast on that. Yeah.
So the challenge at that point was really to move from one social class to the next, right? To really get your footing as you understand now society that it plays a role in network. A network plays a role into that migration from one class to the next class, right? So you really need to now navigate as basically any Americans will navigate it. So those are the big challenges. And now that you have the girlfriend and the children, as at the time, like, it was
You got more than a girlfriend now. You got
I had a wife at the time. Now I became a wife, and I had a wife and two children. It was some serious navigation that needed to occur. Quite challenging, and it's not even, and that wasn't it, because when I met my at the time girlfriend, when we were on that dating stage, I was labeled the African. Oh, you dated an African guy. It was that label that was just like, why don't you right there? And for me, I was like, how can you? I am just like any American. So how would you want to label me? And I took that very personal, not so personal, but I was like, okay, if you're going to, then I'll stick it to you. Then this African will definitely show you. So that was also that identity crisis that I was dealing with when I was my wife and I were discovering each other.
Mhm.
And yeah, navigating all these socials, right? So yeah,
So
that
you
was
have a very good experience, because not only did you get married to somebody who was here, but also she has background from is it Jamaica? Jamaica, right? Or
yeah. Her mother is from Jamaica. Her dad's from
okay. So that's a diverse experience.
that was at its own. So the mother was very receptive on the immigrant side of it. Oh, he's African. There was some reception from the mother. The dad was just like, okay, all right, okay, yeah. He didn't know quite a make of it, right? So, but the mother also had some reservation. The African's reputation. What are you dating my daughter for the papers, for the immigration paper? That I was already a citizen. I already had my ducks in a row. Is he using you? Even the dad was also, is the plan, is he going to use you to get his citizenship?
So those are some of the challenges that you face as a foreigner coming into another country, African. Also curious, and people are on their guards saying, okay, what does this person actually need from me? Even when you go into relationships. Yeah. All right. So now you moved on from the United States of all those experiences. Then, the whole family, you guys moved to Sweden. So getting into Europe, I will assume you had a different set of challenges in that culture as well, right? So what was the strategy for you and your family to adapt quickly, integrate into that new culture and go about your business? Did you have any?
I did actually. So to be honest, I would just say to make it even more complicated is that I say we did not select Sweden in the list of countries that we wanted to actually go to. And the going to process, it was just in that we just selected a country. It was through the migration, the mobility service, but mobility program in my wife's job that enabled us to actually give us the opportunity to do it. But Sweden wasn't selected, but Sweden picked up her application and was very interested in her skills. But prior to us, it was again, it was that community, that network. I had a diplomat, family friend who came to visit me, and he was like, "You should definitely, with your background and your immigration experience, you should give it a shot. You should give Europe a shot. That could open door for you. That could set you at a different level.
So the diplomat was coming from Europe. Okay.
So he lived in Geneva,
In Geneva.
Switzerland.
Okay.
So at the time he lived in Geneva, Switzerland, and we grew up together in Cameroon. My 13 years in Cameroon, he's the one who bought me my first hamburger, and in Cameroon. So he was very fond of me. And then when I popped up in the surface again after being off the grid for such a long, he's like, "Oh man, I gotta go see this young man, what he's doing," and he was quite impressed by what happened because they thought I became a thug smoking weed.
That's interesting because my family thought it's like because I always used to say, okay, like the African culture back home, there was so much restriction when we were growing up. I don't know how it is right now. Maybe they've loosened up, but there were. Like as a child, there was so much restrictions, even your hairstyle and everything. Because I look at my son right now, like he has different hairstyles a month. Sometimes he has his twisties and stuff like that. And for us, we couldn't even do twisties or let alone dreadlocks. And I wanted dreadlocks. So when I went to school in the United States, my family was like, man, by the time he comes back, he's a pure Rasta man. I haven't had a chance to do my dreadlock yet. We'll see.
So it was his influence basically who gave us the motivation to just ask the question and set applications. Once the application was open, I was very hesitant to do it because it was just I had a family at the time, and I knew from immigration standpoint, she has never left the United States too. It's a challenge. But you remember the time, I think you and I discussed it back then when it was time to go. And I also consulted my management team at PepCo. If it wasn't for my management team at PepCo, I think I would have just probably shoot it down too. But they were all like, "Abel, this is a lifetime opportunity. I have to go." Everybody said that I have to go. So I just started making a plan. What does it mean to go? Did some research, basically back to school and that homeschool research that you have to do. We did 6 months of hard research, basically from the internet. What does this mean to go? Apartments, immigration system. I was crystal clear on the foundation that needs to happen. If this thing's happening, then we're good. The foundation was that the company sponsors the immigration system. No compromising, right?
Yes.
Crystal clear in the demand. That was a hardcore requirement, no negotiation on that. And the company came out, we will sponsor your immigration journey, right? We would take care of it from beginning to end. You don't have to worry about anything else. Like if they do it, then that's already a big step because, man, you don't want to navigate immigration by yourself.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the point about research. So I think that's imperative that we can highlight that for a lot of people, especially, like this platform mostly tailors to people of Afro origin, but also anybody else. But to just kind of emphasize the importance of people doing their research or where they're going to, because we've had so many stories where Africans migrate to certain countries and go and face inhumane treatments. Okay, so you want to do some research and try to know where to avoid and where you can go as well. So I'm glad that you brought that point on research.
Yes, research is definitely important, but the research basically say that the conclusion on the research is basically came out that it's going to be a challenge because this is an area where there aren't so many Black people there. And then, but it could also be an opportunity because they are integrated into Europe also. So they are part of the EU union. So with that, you can just mobility within EU. It's possible. My objective for the family was to give them another option. The same way I was afforded the option, the United States option. You can see I can travel back to Cameroon and back to the United States. I can dabble in both systems. I was looking for a third option, right? So if I can afford my family a third option, then that would be awesome. Why not? So that was the main objective.
Strategically for you, being in Europe, that's a shorter distance to fly to Cameroon to visit family. As compared,
the U.S. system does not really make it easy for you to leave. Honestly,
Yeah.
I found this the hard way. I had to, and it was also, and you have to be honest. It was the old school teaching from the grandma in Cameroon that actually supported. That was the foundation of my financial management structure. Don't pay your bills. Don't owe money to no one. You know that strategy right there. Don't build up credit. Right. Pay everything now. So I was able to literally, as I went through my journey, minimize my credit and the number of creditors that were behind me. So because of that strategy, I was easily able to, the other ones that I had left, such as I had a car to let go, I could easily let go of it and take off without any burden on my side. That right there actually was a big help, because what happened once we got to Sweden is that, well, the paycheck got slashed in half, or more than a half, because I didn't have a job. My wife income was half completely, and then we're still paying bills in the United States, and we're paying bills in Sweden simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, that had to be tough.
Very tough. I mean, and it's the journey. Was enjoyable because we were together. We were a family.
Yeah.
If it was by yourself, you would add the stress of being alone in a very strange place.
Right. What a good support system.
Yes.
Well, okay. So now you're in Sweden, and now you're working now. You are a country asset manager for Vattenfall onshore wind. So you get to meet people of diverse background, obviously, working, both on the field and everywhere with people. So what's the main challenge that you would face as a foreigner? Now you're coming from the US, and then also you also have the African identity also.
Yes. So I did have an identity crisis. I tell you, it's you cannot go through this journey without one. And I remember to Cameroon with my daughter once, and I called my wife. It's like, I'm very disturbed because I don't know which language to speak. I was on the airplane plane full of Cameroonians, and they were speaking French and English, and I was like, part of me said, don't speak French to them, only keep it in English. But simultaneously, I want to relate like an African, and I want to also speak like them also. So it was very disturbing. I was very confused. But also, now that I added this Swedish background, which I was also trying to fit into the Swedish culture, that was very troublesome, because I try hard to speak that language very early on. You can see, as I remember coming to a meeting, talking to this young man. I said, yeah, I can understand the language 70%. And he was like, and the young man looked at me, he was like, how can you quantify that? What was the foundation of this calculation?
Right.
And I was very baffled. I'm like, man, he's right. How are you going to quantify 75% of understanding the language? So this is me lying to myself that I can actually fit in, basically. I'm throwing these numbers out here. So integration, language, Swedish language was definitely, they're fluent in English. In Sweden, they speak, the second language is Swedish. I think most people in Stockholm were speaking. Throughout the country, they speak a good level of English. However, the cooler conversation, this is where the secrets are passed, the tricks, the tips are all in Swedish. And you're not going to get anywhere in your role if you do not get those tips and tricks. And they are only given in Swedish. So it took me quite a long time to actually feel like, oh yeah, now I feel like I am integrated. And my wife had a different strategy from day one. She was like, I'm not even going to pretend that I know your language or I want to speak it. I give it to you in English, and I know you can understand English. And if you want me to respond to you, to engage with you, you give it to me in English. She has already set her stage, and she communicated that to her stakeholders, and they have accepted her. They welcomed her, and they accepted her. For me, I went to several rejection at work simply because I have not set that stage. I was removed from a role. I had a manager role, managing a whole Swedish team, and the Swedish colleague came and went to the union and complained. This guy doesn't understand a thing of what I'm telling him. Yeah, it wasn't that I was incompetent. It just that we couldn't talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a big I think the first I've been in the company for 6 years, but I would say the first 4 years were literally integration issues. Swedish language played a big role into it. So I put a lot of effort learning the language. And at some point when I came out of my identity crisis my identity crisis, and I have told myself the basically different learning from my wife from different people. And I say, you know what? I'm not gonna pretend anymore. I do understand what you're saying. I will have to give it to you in English because that's my comfort zone.
That's where I come from. Yeah.
So when I have made up my mind, when I came out of it, I became very confident. I took on this role. When I approached the hiring manager, I told him in plain English, you can speak all the Swedish you want, but I will respond to you in English. If
Yeah.
you're okay with that, we move forward. If you're not okay with that, then I'm not the right person for you.
Yeah. So that's very informative, because also I know like some people also do have challenges when they come, even say they come from, let's say, coming from an African country that has English as an official language, but they migrate to a foreign country where they still speak English, like the United States. People sometimes still feel intimidated because they don't speak like Americans and stuff like that, right? So they kind of like shy away from
I would then I
jobs they
would
can actually apply for, which they have the skills for, to settle for some that they can speak less, and they're not like upfront. They don't present themselves upfront mostly.
I recognize exactly what you're saying because I talked to so I came, was like, I know Sweden immigrated a lot 10 years prior to me arriving here. There are many people from Africa who came here. The data shows it. Where are they? Comes to find out that that stereotype of African follows you wherever you go. It's not just in the United States, right? If you get an African in the system, it's going to be difficult. They might try to steal from you. They might try to do some shady stuff. It follows you everywhere. It really does. So for me, we didn't get this kind of problem because the origin that we presented was from the United States, a credible country where the incredible education, where if you're from the United States, you're definitely better than the average Swedish citizen, right, in terms of performance. But if you come from any country in Africa with the same skill set, they look down on you. Can you even open an email? Can you even learn Swedish? I'm telling you, the assumption that goes on is just amazing. And that's how they're asking you basically all kinds of basic questions that they won't ask for anybody coming from a different country, right? So that stereotype follows you everywhere you go and really becomes a barrier for you to overcome.
Yes. So those are biases, and unfortunately, people don't take the efforts to try to learn and understand other people's culture before stereotyping them. Okay, so that's a problem. But interesting on there. So African Europe Foundation debate did conduct an analysis, right, where they say that 3% of Africans were living outside their home country in 2020. So African immigrants constitute about 14.5% of the global migrant population, compared to 41% of Asians and about 22.5% of Europeans. Okay, so it means we have a smaller percentage of migration percentage from Africa as compared to Asians and Europe. However, what do you think is a driving factor for such a small percentage of African migrants versus what we always see or read on the news about Africans migrating to Europe? Because all you always see is more Africans. So I was shocked to see these numbers. I thought the percentage for Africans migrating was actually larger than that. But
I think if you ask a different question, for example, what's the rejection rate for this country, for this region, you will see that maybe we tell a different story, that we as African we have a high rejection rate,
right.
rejection rate compared to any other continent, any other places. It is true, right? Simply because of that bias. I think the Asian society probably have a different bias that surround them. But the Africans usually, and the way they come in, have a different bias that surround them. So when you get it, when you're an immigration officer and you get a case with an African in which you have to say yes or no, that bias plays a role in your decision. No matter how well educated you are, it will play a role. I don't know the numbers. If you don't present, if you don't have all your documents order, everything is crystal clean. If one thing is off, they'll reject you. They're not going to try to call you and to send you an email requesting further information. They just plainly reject you. So I think that's probably one of that bias is the number one barrier to African migration. But also the cost of migration is huge cost of migration for Africans. It's not easy to get on that plane. And then once you get on that plane, that integration system, that integration steps, it's huge. It might take you 10 to 25 years to feel like you made it.
Yeah, and that's but sometimes, yes. Yeah, it's not an easy challenge at all. Yeah. So interesting. There was a Kenyan lady by the name Mwende Mutili Musao. I hope I pronounced it right. So she wrote about her experience in a foreign country in an article published in Better to Speak. So she titled her article "The Hard Knock Life of an African Immigrant Living Abroad." Okay, so where she wrote that Black people were systematically marginalized when it came to better work opportunities, among other challenges. Okay, just like you talked briefly about that. So in her case, she also had no experience working in that country. So her many job application got rejected. Yeah, so it is not always rosy in a foreign land as it is, right? As many people perceive, paint it to be. Do you think a lot of Africans understand that?
I think they do understand it, but the alternative is there's no other option, right? There's no other better alternative. Okay. So it's actually fulfilling to go through that journey than to do nothing. Do you understand? So as a young African growing up and going through the schooling and graduating and find themselves with no employment, and they're going to the adolescent with no employment, the temptation to actually do something with your life and take that risk becomes very strong, and you start overlooking the challenges and the risk on the other side. You start minimizing them. I can do this. Oh, that's not a problem. Or if I can survive here, I can definitely survive there, right? You're minimizing all this other risk on the other side because we are faced with we think can be facing a bigger challenge at home compared to abroad. So that's also that perspective right there. And once you are abroad, then the reality sets in that there are actually, if you make it through, meaning that you get your documentation, you get your unemployment, then you become part of the system. And if you do not have the education and the strength, the mental strength and discipline to use the system to your advantage, you'll be part of the system for the rest of your, as long as you say that you'll be part of the system. And you will start to, and that's how that story will be told, basically. But I would say, from when I discussed with different, I have also family and friends who actually were very successful back home, built successful businesses and successful life in Cameroon. And they tell you, I would like, no matter what happens, I'm not leaving.
Yeah, I think there are people like that. I do have people in my family also who have the same notion, which is really good. I believe that we cannot say Africans should not migrate to other countries, because obviously there are pros for going to other cultures as well. But at the same time, the politicians and even the natives, indigenous people in Africa, we have a greater responsibility of changing the narrative and actually putting in work to make sure that we have things back home that function, right? That will keep people employed, that will keep jobs, and also people can have access to good health care infrastructure and what have you. So it's a task for all Africans to do that, right? Because nobody else is gonna come and do that for you. Okay, so
Right.
that can curb the immigration rate as well.
Right.
Yeah, we got to be. But going to, like, you also made a good point. I know there are, even despite the challenges to succeed in a foreign country, right? There's really no like a clear-cut answer for how you can adapt. Okay, there's so many tips that have been given, but there are many people who have succeeded and have accomplished great things in foreign countries, right? For example, a good example is the former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He originated from Thai, Austria, okay, in 1968 and became a U.S. citizen in, I think, 1983. That's what I read. Okay, so he was successful in his acting career and even became a governor of California. You see, this is someone who adapted. Okay, we also have the former UN Secretary General and the 2002 Nobel Peace Prize winner, the late Kofi Annan, who resided in Geneva, despite originally coming from Ghana. He passed away in Bern, Switzerland as well. He was also very successful. Okay, we have so many other people, health workers, who are migrated to different countries from African countries. We also have, sports and entertainment, a lot of footballers and soccer players, also say it here, and some have adapted successfully, and others have also failed and found themselves packing bag and baggage and going back home, right? So this is a very interesting topic, and it can actually be broadened to that. So what advice would you give to, say, you have a sibling, you have two siblings who moved from Cameroon to, say, the United States? One is in the 20s or, in the teens, and then the other is probably over 40 years old. What advice would you give them in what to expect and how to adapt in the country? Is it easy for someone who are set in their life for them to adapt?
So let's start with the 20-year-old. I would say to the 20-year-old, prior to you making that journey, do your research, right? Mm-hmm. If you think you're going to face a language barrier, make sure that barrier becomes lower before you take off. Once you're in there, once you arrive, then I would highly recommend the integration process. It could be made easier if you start joining some networks. Mm-hmm. It could be church. Church is a great point to start meeting some networks. They have great acceptance on sports. They can have, if you play football, basketball, any sports, usually they really accept you if you're really good, if you put the hard work and you have a good attitude. These are networks that really open doors and get to know who you are and get to know other people. Continue to better yourself, right? So continue to better yourself meaning that live within the country. It's very easy to always try to go back home or try to eat the food from back home or try to maybe get the same supplier from back home. If you want to integrate, you can always go back home and eat that food, right? But if you are here, try to go to that local McDonald's and see how they do it, right? Try to go to that restaurant that is, that seems to be foreign to you and learn how exactly they behave in there. Right, that's part of that English. And then once you're in there, you can see some doors will open, something will click in. Is that part of that that journey? As a 20-year-old, be curious about these things. Try to learn. Home is always going to be home. That need for that food, that's always there. You're not going to get it, but the opportunity to get to know something new, to learn it, to embrace it, is when you're in that journey.
Is there. Getting out of that comfort zone, people say, get out of your box and try to learn something different. We know the African food is available. Here you can cook it all day long, but sometimes go to the restaurant, see how the other people behave, and try to learn something. Getting out of your comfort zone. Yeah, that's a very good point. I really appreciate that.
So for the 40-year-old, I would say you already have your identity, you're already set in your ways. I would still say, if you're making that journey, then you will know why you're making the journey. Because when you're 40s, you're already very, very straightforward in your purpose. So you probably migrate into a place that will support you for retirement, right? And the same thing applies, right? You just need to now find your spots, right? You have to know who you are. If you're a chess player, you need to find your chess club somewhere, right? So before making that journey, where are you? If you're a gym person, make sure you reside in a place where there's a gym, so that integration process goes along with what you already built in. So find the things that you've been given that you know yourself. These small things such as the gym, the chess club, the swimming, if this is what you're into, or the cooking and blah blah blah. Find that place next to where you go in this new journey and reside next to there to smooth your integration process, basically. So, and then once you've already get into it, you get into your groove based on the things that makes you you, then you will find yourself thriving. As a 40-year-old from now, I am 40, and I'm thinking, I'm very concrete and very direct into who I am and with my identity, what I like, what I don't like, what I can, what I cannot do. I'm still curious, but some certain things are already set.
Yeah.
So then I will more gravitate towards the things that are already set that I know will bring me joy. Because at that point, we're all looking for joy. I know you're a hard worker, but that joy and that pleasure, that's where I'm going to go. That's where I'm going to migrate to. And that's where I'm going to base my integration around, basically, right?
Right. So I always like to use this platform to highlight the many good things happening in Africa and also in the diaspora, to use people's story to uplift people. We could have sat down here and talk technical stuff because we're both engineers and we've worked together before. But we said, no, let's talk about something that we experience in our communities, right? So what is your final uplifting story or message for people who have or intend to give up on Africa and move somewhere else? Or maybe they're just moving for opportunities, not necessarily giving up in Africa, which is a good thing. And also for Africans abroad, what do we need to do more as Africans, in your opinion?
I think for me in my situation, what we should do is you should tell your story a little bit more. I think I was very shy in telling my story until I fell in love with my own story, basically. We all have our own story, right?
You had these times in your head and then you fell in love with it.
You have to, man. It's your story, man. So share your story because your story can empower somebody else to make that journey, right?
Absolutely.
I'm not, and that's my way of giving back, right? Go to those community, like meet everywhere I go. I make it a purpose to, if I see a brother, my African brother and everything else, no matter what, I will reach out and say hi and introduce myself and just let it play out after that particular first step. That's basically what I do. And I would encourage anyone, any young man and woman who are willing to actually go out there, take that risk. Don't delay it. Take it. If you're still young, that mistake could be the best mistake you ever made in your life, right? You never know, it could easily change your life. Because when I made my mistake, I'm telling you, I packed everything. If we were going to fail, we were going to fail hard over there. And that was determined. So once you're in there, you don't know how you're going to swing it. Your natural instinct will kick in and it could be a beautiful story afterwards, or it will be a good lesson learned.
Absolutely. I do agree. That's very enriching. I know you're on LinkedIn. Are you on any social media platforms? How do our audience reach out to connect with you if they have to connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn, definitely on LinkedIn, less active. I am less active in Instagram, but I'm there. I think the best way to reach me is actually in LinkedIn because I do monitor it quite often. So the best way to reach out to me is just send me a message on LinkedIn and we exchange information. Yeah.
And the name again is Abel
Debilogo. That's right. Abel Debilogo. Look into Vattenfall. You'll see me there. Or Exelon. I still have my thing there.
Yeah, I communicate a lot in LinkedIn. Yeah, it's nice. Well, so we have exhausted most of our time with this conversation. I'm pretty sure it's gonna continue in the near future. So I would like to thank you, Abel, for making time. I know you have a very busy schedule of work and the family, but you have shared great insights on the challenges and how to adapt in foreign countries based on your experience. I really enjoyed your presence here. I believe it will go a long way to help people who find themselves in such positions. It was an absolute honor and pleasure to have you here as my special guest on this podcast. I hope you will give me an open door policy to bring you back on this platform again for another interesting topic.
Anytime, Emmanuel. This is I'm super excited to tell my story and many things that we can exchange on. We haven't even touched. We both work in the energy field, or we have a background in energy. That's a huge spaghetti bowl right there that we can definitely go back and forth on for many hours. So I'll be definitely glad to rejoin you again on this platform and share more expertise, more perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of my audience also don't know me by the name Emmanuel, because that's what we use mostly when our professional setting. But Kofi Dake is what they know me. But yes, Emmanuel is my name as well. Remember, when one door is closed, many are open. This quote is actually attributed to Alexander Graham Bell and was amplified, in my opinion, by the legendary Bob Marley. So my message is, so never give up. To our listeners, a big thank you for staying tuned with us. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Uplift Chronicles. And please leave us your feedback on our social media platform. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many others. Please don't forget to also subscribe, and that way we can push a lot of updates to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Uplift Chronicles. I hope you found inspiration in today's stories and the spirit of upliftment. Remember, every life has the power to inspire change, and every story is a thread in the rich tapestry of our shared heritage. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly subscribe and leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little upliftment in their life. Follow us on social media for more updates and join the conversation. Until next time, keep uplifting and stay inspired. Signing off, this is Kofi Dake.